y'all doing? So this is my first interview, y'all. We're gonna talk about black marriage. I have made a commitment because I work with a lot of young people to talk about marriage, and black marriage in particular, because sometimes we see a lot of images, and I'm gonna be very honest. I've been seeing a lot of commercials, and I have been seeing black couples in the commercial.
Oh, we've noticed that.
Yeah, so I was like, no, I'm gonna have to go ahead on and use our social media to show black couples who are married and who love each other. And so I am joined tonight, have the pleasure of being joined tonight by Brother Imhotep and his beautiful wife. And so, welcome. Thank y'all for coming down and talking to me.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, thank you.
We're talking about
we're glad to help. We're glad to be a part, but we're just kind of like just regular folks. We're still working on ourselves every day.
Right on.
And so we're not perfect. So I don't want to present us as like the perfect couple. Because my wife is perfect, but I'm a little.
No, it's all good. So when you both were growing up, what were your thoughts on marriage? Just when you were growing up, before you even knew y'all met each other, what was your thoughts on marriage?
So I grew up. My parents stayed together, and we lived down the street from my grandparents who were together. So I just kind of looked at marriage as the man was the provider and the woman was the manager. Just basically that's what I got from observing my parents and my grandparents.
And mine was a little bit different. Now, my parents were married, and then they divorced when I was 10 years old. But my grandparents, both sets of my grandparents, were married over 50 years.
Wow.
And so my maternal grandparents, they were married 52 years, and my dad's parents were married about 53, 54 years also. So marriage was something that I saw, but the other thing, because my mother was divorced, and you figure from the 50s and 60s, what marriage was and what it meant for women was a little bit different. So I always heard, make sure you take care of yourself so that if it doesn't work out, you can do it on your own. But it was always the respect of marriage and that it's important, and that's the cornerstone.
So how old were you both when you first thought about marriage? Just when you thought about it, was a thought like, I guess I'll get married one day, or how old were you abouts?
I don't know. I guess 14 or 15.
Okay.
I really didn't think about getting married because I kind of felt like I had to take care of myself first, and then by loving myself and getting myself in order, I could be a better person. So I didn't want to define myself by marriage. And I think because of that, I was fortunate enough to find someone who I was willing to marry and who would be a partner. And I think if the goal is marriage, because I can also remember during the time period in college, people start buying brides magazines, and they were looking at the dresses and the weddings and all that kind of stuff. Yes, in college.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, well, I wasn't
speaking to your mics.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for that. And the people that were looking for that had the hardest time.
Not my mouth is loud. I'm loud.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
So I really wasn't looking for it, and I was fortunate enough to find it. And I think those that were looking for the marriage versus trying to find themselves had that's really the answer to it for me. And when I got married, because my mother was like, go to school so you can take care of yourself. If the man doesn't act right, and she didn't say man, but if the man doesn't act right, you can tell him to hit the door. But I was like, she was always telling me what to do if he doesn't do right. But the day I got married, my mother, at that point, when I told her that, hey, I'm getting married and I wasn't quite finished with college, and she says, that wasn't the deal. I'm thinking, we didn't make a deal, did we? I don't remember, but she wanted me to be able to take care of myself.
Right on.
But what she said that day was, you put your faith in God. Don't put your faith in man, because man can let you down. Put your faith in God, that God will work it out. And I think that was the key. And I can remember my grandmother before she passed, because she passed right before I met my husband. And she said, you want to find a God-fearing man. And so when I started talking with my husband on the phone, my grandmother had been dead probably a few weeks when we started talking. And I said, well, my grandmother said I need a God-fearing man. And he goes, I'm God-fearing. But she didn't say you want a Christian or you want a holiness person. She said a God-fearing man. And I think that set the tone for me of what I would be looking for in a man. And I can remember my grandfather, my grandparents, he would call her Bunch for Honey Bunch, and just always very affectionate towards her. So that's what I remember when I think of marriage,
How did y'all meet?
Well, for me, we had a couple of meetings. And this is going back to, we met on July 14th, 1979.
Wow.
And the reason why I know that is because me and two friends formed a group called Salongo, and we gave a party at the assay office in San Francisco. And, we had like about 400 people there, 300 to 400 people. And, passed out a lot of flyers. And my sister was in the MESA program. So she brought some of the people that were in the MESA program, and she introduced me to my future wife then. And I remember meeting a group of young ladies, but I don't remember Doris specifically.
Well, and the thing about it is, and I think this is a lesson that we also try to teach our children, he remembers that because it was the day after my birthday, and I was dating this man, and I was just too through. I just kind of, that day on my birthday, when I got out the car, after I saw him, he had given me some flowers. I put the flowers in the trash can, and I was done. And what that says is, you got to prepare for receiving your blessing. So I had to move out the trash in order to receive the fine blessing. And so I was working for the MESA program. I'm an engineer, so the MESA's Math, Engineering, and Science Student Association. And I was working for the program, and they were going to go to Santa Cruz, and Imhotep's mother offered to do some cooking for the group, and I did too. So me and the director went by his mother's house, and all of a sudden this guy comes out, this tall guy, and I'm like, oh, you should come, we have extra room. And he goes, oh, I don't think so. And that Saturday, when I get there to meet where the bus was taking us, he was there before I was. And so we rode on all the rides at Santa Cruz, and kind of was cool, it's like, okay. And he says, oh, there's a party happening tonight. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. He didn't ask for my number now. And so I'm like, okay, we're exhausted. We've been at the amusement park all day. I then go home, get dressed, show up to the party, took, two friends with us. He wasn't even there. And I was like, but the thing we realized in talking while we were at the amusement park, we had been at a lot of the same parties, but never saw each other. But once again, that goes back, once I got rid of the trash, then I could then receive the blessing. And so I then took a job with Mesa again when school started to help prepare students for the SAT. And his sister then asked me for my number, and he then called me, and that was in 1979. We started talking really in 1980, so we've been together 39 years, and we've been married 32 years.
We've been together 38.
It'll be 39
It'll be
in
39
January.
in
It'll be 39 in
39
January.
years?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we talk about when our first anniversary, because we went over to Pier 39. Back then you have limited money. We both were in school, and we went to the restaurant, and we're trying to he was trying to be cool and order the cheapest thing on the menu and everything. And it was cold, and we just had enough to get back, and so we didn't leave a tip or anything. And then we walked from Pier 39 back to the bar, and just those experiences. But yeah, that we met because I was working, and his sister happened to be there, and then we've been together ever since.
So is there criteria that you have when you're looking for someone to marry, or when you think about the ideal of marriage for yourself? Was there a criteria?
I think there is, but when you meet that right person, really kind of all your criteria goes away. Okay, yeah, you have all these standards, they have to have this, they have to look this way, they have to be that way. But then when you meet somebody that you really gel with, you your criteria kind of fades away.
But you truly understand what is your criteria, because you don't understand it till you meet, so you don't know it till you experience it. So I knew I had to be somebody who I respected, and so that's real. And what we tell our sons as they are trying to find that significant other or encounter is somebody who has the same values. I think that's the key thing, because when it becomes the difficult times, you're trying to make decisions or you're trying to solve things, if you're on the same page of what's important, what's your priorities, that's the key. Because just because someone was in the same neighborhood or the same skin color or same denomination doesn't mean they have the same values and then have the same vision as far as priority. And I think that that's important.
So what does marriage ultimately mean? What's marriage meaning? What's its purpose?
It's committed togetherness. So that just kind of, I know marriage is like a legal contract, and that's the way a lot of people look at it, but you've actually pledged yourself to this person in front of God and your family and friends, and you've pledged to live the rest of your life with that person.
But the other thing too is that it's an institution that's the foundation of our community. Because what my grandmother would always say, the one that rocks the cradle rocks the world. And so whether that is happening, whether you have biological children or not, the key thing is when you're coming together and you're the first one that's teaching that child what to say and how to say it, what to do and what not to do, what's right and what's wrong. And so coming together, that yin and that yang, but it's like you're teaching and developing and having that partner that when you're tired, you can tap out or, just, okay, you got it right now. I'm going to go do this while you continue. So that's important. And if we don't have that support system, like when you're sick or when you're going through something, that you have that, I need some help or I need some insight, it's harder to make those decisions and talk it through by yourself. And having someone who can check you or support you or encourage you then encourages the family, and then making decisions, whether it's financially or socially or culturally. Those are all key. So that marriage is that foundation. It's the teaching, it's the financial institution also. It's a social teaching, and whether it's the language, how to speak, how to interpret what's going on. So the marriage is the foundation for all those things that grow our community. It's not just the physical and the sexual part, That's all going to be there. I mean, animals have that. But marriage that human beings have is so much more to where we're going to be. And when we deteriorate the family and marriage, then we're deteriorating our community. So before, and there are bad marriages, and they're good marriages, but good marriages are going to be what sustains our community. So now that we don't have as much of them making decisions, it doesn't matter. You're watching social media, you're watching crazy, stuff, Lifetime, in regard, but that's, that's not what it's about.
Right on.
It's not all the gleam, it's not like what you're wearing this, and, he's buying me this, and it's, when I see young people thinking it's all about, oh, boo bought me this, and my boo's gonna put the rose petals, and it's like, okay, now, is that boo going to be there when you're sick and when you're pregnant and you pee on yourself, or when you get older and you have to get the colonoscopy and you're prepping for that, or when you're having heart surgery and you can't put your clothes on? I mean, there are all kinds of things that it's more than just the physical, but it is the community.
What were the things between the two of you that was a commonality in you guys being married? What do you think some of the commonality that you feel like you must have in your marriage? You must have that in your marriage.
Or what we must not have.
Oh, you can do both.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do other stuff that you must have. It's also opposite to that too.
Well, no drama, no drama. Like no drama, Obama, but no drama.
Okay.
No craziness. And I think there would be no infidelity is something, but it's respect. I think is the key, that they have to have the respect, and that you love. So I can remember. We didn't argue. We don't like arguing. It's like arguing. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. If I get quiet, then he knows I'm kind of upset about something. But no arguing, and because it is now interesting. Our sons say, "Oh wow, we never saw you guys argue." You know, I'm like, okay, you know.
I love it.
And the joke that we have, because we're in a 2-story house, if I'm downstairs cleaning up, or I take a pile of stuff that needs to go upstairs and I put it at the bottom of the stairs, and I would think he'd know that if I put it there, he's supposed to carry it up. So it took years for him to realize that that's what that meant, you know. So.
What about you?
So on the stairs thing, I knew what that meant originally, but just don't put it at the stairs, you know, and just expect it to
Communication.
take. Yeah, so that was communication. So what was the question? For me?
So what things you in your marriage that you feel like really that you had to have to keep your marriage going, to keep your marriage together?
Just compatibility, kindness, like Doris said, the same values, same goals. You know, it took a lot back then for a young woman to be with a guy who wore dreadlocks and changed his name from a Western name to an African name.
Yeah.
And was willing to accept that as her name. You know, so a lot of people you can get along with, but they may not really be in your corner. Now, there's a story in our relationship that kind of defined it for us. And Doris she moved into a place, you know, on the other side of the duplex, and she was getting it ready, and I was there to help her to get it ready, and so in the basement, you know, at the bottom of the back stairs, we had to move this refrigerator, and so I was going to be, you know, I was going to show my strength, and I was going to carry the refrigerator up by myself, and we were both pulling it up together, and I didn't realize I was pulling it with her until we got it up the stairs, and I looked up, and that made it much easier to bring it up, and that was a metaphor for me, an example for me to say, okay, this is someone that I could work with.
Wow.
One of the things I also think is interesting, because you always hear the young couples' money, how they manage their finance. That goes back to priority, you know, values, decisions. And we never really had the money issues. We never had enough money, but we were always on the same page of where our resources, whether it's our time, our talent, our money, we were on the same page in that regard. So one wasn't going out gambling or, you know, I wasn't going out buying Gucci bags or whatever, you know, so we were on the same page, and that's where I think it makes a difference, or there's a concern, you know, that you would have if you're going to be in a relationship, you've got to be on the same page, because, you know, that money thing will sneak in there.
So when you talk about, how did it factor in with your children in your marriage? Children in your marriage?
So, we kind of took the Francis Welsing approach.
All right, what approach is that for some of us who don't know who that is?
So Francis Welsing says that men shouldn't have, well, first you shouldn't get married till you're like about 30. And then you shouldn't have children. Let's see, how does that go? Get married around 30, have 2 children, and have them spaced 4 years apart. And the reason for that is the first one will get enough lap time before the second one came in. And get married around the time that you're 30, between 30 and 35, because by that time a lot of people are settled in their career. You know, and so those are the general rules. I don't know if we said, hey, we're following Francis, but that's what we ended up doing.
Yeah, because we were together almost 7 years before we got married, and then we were married 5 years before we had children. And so by the time the children came, they were our priority at that time. We were, okay, this is, you know, at that time, you know, those things with, you have your child and they can't touch the floor and all that kind of stuff. And we did that. We catered to every move for the child. Then the second one comes along, and you're like, okay, they'll be all right. They won't get sick, from touching the dirt on the floor. But each one is a different personality. But it worked out because we were on the same page when it came to discipline. There were a couple of times where, he would be a little bit tougher and I'd be the, softer one. And then there'd be times where I'd be the tough one. It's like, oh, don't tell mom, And it's like, no, we have to be on the same page, because if they get us against each other, then they've won and they've lost at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so if they think, oh, go to ask your mom, go ask your dad. Mom and dad are on the same page, and mom and dad are talking to each other. And we've decided what's best for you.
So when you have disagreements in your marriage, how do you deal with them, and do you seek counsel, and if so, with who and why?
Well,
when you have disagreements.
We don't have a lot of disagreements, which is good. And like she said before, we don't like a lot of drama. We don't like a lot of.
Go closer to your mic, please.
We don't like a lot of dynamics, So disagreements, we might get, each one will get quiet, and then Doris usually is the first one to say, about so and so, and then she initiates the conversation, and then we kind of go back and forth on, a particular point.
And I guess it will always be why. So I want to know why. There might be a logic that I don't understand. So I'm trying to understand where he's coming from. And then I'm trying to explain to him where I'm coming from, or why I want to or don't want to do that, or why we shouldn't. And by trying to understand the other person and them understanding where I'm coming from, then we can then say, okay, does that meet our goals? And so we haven't gone outside counseling. We haven't needed that. I think that.
But at the same time, we know some couples that were older than us that we would go and visit, mm-hmm. and not for a counseling session, but just to hang out with them. And so we have we have some friends, Stella and Abder, in East Oakland, and they were a good role model example for us, and they're still together. They're in their 70s.
And they celebrated 50 years last year. Yeah. And I think that that's the key thing right there, is that we're also going to, our spiritual foundation also, I think, is a key thing.
We both came to Wose at the same time together, and, we kind of, our relationship grew within Wose.
And I think, and like you said, we had other couples who were examples and role models, and I didn't have friends who were like, yeah, girl, and then, yeah. I mean, there's going to be a little jealousy and like, oh, why aren't you doing this?
Yeah,
I'm
girl.
like, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Like, oh, yeah, you don't need to be cooking for him, but why you guys, that time, why are we going shopping, right? And we didn't, so the relationships that we had, the friends that we have, and we try to do the same thing with other couples that we know that are younger than us, and so that they see it. And when you come to a challenge, you'll get a phone call, I just want to vent. You know what my husband did? And it's like, okay, I listen. I know they love their husband, and I have to listen. We go on, and then they're fine. So, and so sometimes you just need to vent, hear yourself, and then and the other person say, well, I know you love them, and go on. So I think that we've had friends and family that have been supportive of us and have been role models. And then we try to do the same thing with other couples. So it's not perfect. It's not easy. It's a work in progress. And I think that helps in general. So if you have friends who aren't quite there or have issues, then sometimes you just have to leave it alone. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to fall out with them. You just step back. And that's kind of what I did. There were a couple of folks who I just need to step back from, that they weren't providing the nourishment for me to continue to be who I was,
Wow. You just hit on something, which, I have these questions, but y'all answering them anyway. Yeah. But it's like, when you get married, do you have less single friends? Do you have more married? You kind of said that a little in terms of like, you kind of you were kind of around some support systems with people who were married.
Yes.
So that way you're not getting advice from people who ain't married to nobody. Like, girl, I just wouldn't, So when you said, I was like, ooh, I heard like, you ain't married to nobody. How you talking about somebody when you do their husband?
And how can they help you?
Right.
They can't help themselves,
So did it change though? Like, did your environment change once y'all were married? Did you find yourself like with more married couples, or did your environment change?
Sort of.
Yeah,
Sort of.
and the thing too is that we also, as we reflect back, there are couples who we knew and we saw, you have friends who are the same age group, and then they're going through the same thing, and everybody's going to weddings, and then everybody's going to baby showers, and then when you see them, and you're busy raising children, and then you see them, and you don't have time for those friendships because you're nurturing your family. You see who's still together. And so we have to support each other because it's not easy.
So I have a question. Sister Sonia says, with almost 40 years of marriage, has there been times you considered counseling, or had the stigma of counseling been something that has played into the decision not to?
No.
No. I mean, I think that,
Great question.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
a good
that
question.
is-
That's a great question.
We definitely would not stay away from marriage counseling. And like I said, I think it goes back to having other married couples to just talk with. And so therefore you need, like whether you have a mentor at work, I have mentors, mothers, meaning other mothers who are just a little bit ahead of me who can do recommendations and tell me some of the things when I was raising my children. So the same thing with marriage, when you get to a certain point, and they can then talk you through it and then have you understand it. So I think that I informally had some sisters who were there, and who I can talk to. I can still call and say, you know what he did, or he's stubborn, so, I mean, but the only person I can change is myself.
Right on.
I can't change my husband, and so therefore, knowing and understanding myself better then helps me be a better partner.
Well, before we get to this last question, my comment is, you guys have been together like a really long time. What things have you grown to really just love about each other in all of that time, through the decades? Like, that's a long time to be with someone, to watch change come and go. Styles change, hairdos change, presidents change. change. What is something that's like, I really love this about my mate. I really love this.
See, but I think the other thing is growing old together.
I love everything about it.
I love it.
But you see the different stages, because I can remember when we first got married. Okay, I moved up here in Sacramento in 1983, and we got married in 86, but then he didn't move up here until 87. And so I'm thinking what I saw my grandmother do, or my mother when she was married, and okay, he's going to a job and everything, and I thought I had to do the ironing. I tried to iron one shirt, and I got tired. I'm like, I can remember my grandmother ironing shirt, and I'm like, this isn't what I signed up for. So I look at that and I say,
And I wasn't looking for that. I wasn't expecting her to
You didn't
do
really
that.
care if you ironed the shirt.
Right, I wasn't.
but
Yeah.
you start out at 19, then as they say, you're all peppy and everything, and all of a sudden you get older and things change, and you expand and you move around, but you start out, now you get to this point, hey, let me borrow your readers, I can't see. I was 19 when we first met, and so now we had children, they've gone to college, and just seeing that happen and nurturing that, and now, seeing him retire, and even when last year, a health challenge, and he helps me through my health challenges, and you just see that essence of somebody, and that I can remember when one time we had an argument before we got married, and he was working a swing shift then, and he left, and then when he came, and he didn't get home at the time he was supposed to because there was something wrong with the computer system, and I was so worried. I forgot about that. I was upset. I was just so glad to see him, and that's how it has to be. You have to be glad to see that person, and if you don't, and if that person isn't a kind person, and so that when you get old and you need somebody to hand you a drink of water or go get you something or help you through something, then what has it all been? We've had children who are a part of us and who we put those seeds in, and as they then are trying to figure out challenges or who are their interests, it's kind of overwhelming sometimes, but it's very simple, very simple.
So the final question is, what advice would you give the people who are single who are looking to get married? get that a lot.
Don't look to, you can't be looking to get married. You wanna look to find someone who you are compatible with. So you just wanna find that other part that makes you complete, but you'll find something. There's always something out there.
You'll find something.
You'll find
That's
something.
really good.
You
You don't
know,
want to be finding
You'll
stuff.
find something. So, but let it come to you, you know. Yeah, and that's what I would say. Let it come to you, because the ones that are looking for it, you're gonna, like I said, you're gonna find it. So I would say to them, be still and know that God is in you, and making you the best you and loving yourself makes it where someone can love you to the fullest. And that's what I would say to a young lady. And relationships have a lot of sacrifice. And that's why I tell my sons that it's gonna be hard, because usually the woman's gonna have to give up a lot. So be patient with everything, and it will come in due time. Don't try to rush it.
Right on.
I think that, again, I agree with everything that Doris said, not just because she's sitting next to me, but you have to kind of work on yourself individually.
closer to the mic.
You have to work on yourself individually and prepare yourself for when that time comes and you meet the right person.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you're not prepared in yourself and you meet the right person, it's not going to work. You guys aren't going to gel. But if you've been working on yourself mentally, spiritually, physically, career-wise, whatever career that you want to establish, entrepreneur, or your lawyer, doctor, whatever, then you'll be somewhere. You won't be looking for a person, and then you'll meet that person. I've seen that happen a lot of times.
But once again, make sure you don't want to, if somebody's a knucklehead or not quite right, move them out so that you can receive your blessing. It's like clearing out the garage. You clear out that space so you can park that new car. So you want to make room to be loved and to have that love come in your house. So, if you're tied up with something that's wasting your time, you won't receive that blessing. So even right now, as our sons are at that age where they're looking, I also recognize that they need to understand, how there are going to be a lot of folks who are saying, oh, wow, here's a black man who's about to be a doctor or entrepreneur. I got a paycheck there. It's like, no, you want someone who just loves you for you.
Right on. Right on. I know that was my last question, but I got to close. You mentioned the word sacrifice.
Yeah.
Usually we don't use that a lot anymore. How
have-
important is that to marriage?
You have to sacrifice. You have to sacrifice your ego.
Yeah.
You have to sacrifice things that you thought were important, and you need to. You are marrying that person, so whoever they are, it's always us.
Yeah. It's always us.
So usually you can tell if your relationship is going the right way or the wrong way is if adversity comes. If you want to work it out together versus you did this, you did that. See, that's not unity. So whoever they are,
It's always us.
it's always us.
That's our kind of.
Yeah.
He goes, it's always us, no matter what.
Right on. Thank you both so much. This was so awesome. Y'all, tomorrow I'll be back with the Shabazz out of Atlanta, and it's a young couple who got married, I think last year, or was it this year? So they're excited to talk about their journey. So it's like, wow, we started off with y'all.
With us old
Yeah.
folks.
With
us
us
old
old
folks.
We're gonna do mixtures. We want to do mixtures, like I do think when you're studying something, it's always best to talk to someone who's done it for a while, like
Yeah.
you've been in it for a minute. So when you see the young people, it's like, oh, that's so nice.
Yeah. and let them know it's going to be work, but it's all worth it. And as I was telling my son, it's just like child labor. Child labor, when you're about to have a baby, you're like all excited when you find out you're pregnant and everything's all cute, and then all of a sudden that I'm in labor and it hurts and Lord have mercy, and then you're like, oh, what did I get myself into? But at the end, when the pain is over, then you have such joy. And that's anything that's worth it's for part of the creation process. So the creating love
Wow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Hey, hold on, let me hit this button.
Let
over
me just
here.
say that
Okay, go ahead.
you are a great host.
Oh,
I
thank you.
admire
Josh.
many of the things that you're doing, just about everything that you're
Oh.
doing, and honored to be on your show.
Oh, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on. Let me hit this button. All right. You guys were awesome. This light be killing me.